This is a statistics video about back-to-back stem and leaf plots. Back-to-back stem and leaf plots are used to compare data sets. So here we have an example. The heights of first-year boys and girls are recorded, and the boys' measurements are on the page here: 165, 158, 142, 155, 168 and 145 centimetres. And the girls are 160, 159, 165, 150, 152 and 154 centimetres. And our instruction is to represent this data on a back-to-back stem and leaf plot, and then to analyse the data to determine which group is taller. Just like with a regular stem and leaf plot, we'll draw the rough version first, and then we'll tidy it up if necessary to make the final version of the diagram. For a back-to-back stem and leaf, we'll begin by drawing our outline like this. We've got a column in the middle for the stem, and then we have a space to the left and to the right because we have our two separate groups. I must make sure to write the name of the group on top so that it's clear which is which. Before I decide what values to put in my stem, I'm going to have a look at the numbers that I'm dealing with. So you'll notice that all of the values in both sets start with 1. So it wouldn't be much use to me to write 1 in here to the stem, because then everything will be on the same row. So instead, if I look at the numbers again, I can see that I have 160 something, 150 something, 140 something, 150 something, 160 something, 140 something, and all the values are within these three intervals, if you like, the 140s, the 150s and the 160s. So this is what I'm going to put in the stem. So I filled in 14, 15, 16 to represent 140 something, 150 something, 160 something. And now I'll fill in the value at the end of each height to complete the measurements. I'm going to start with the boys group here on the left, and going through my data as it's presented to me, 165 is my first value, so 165, then 158, 142, 155, 168, 145. So I have the rough version of my boys' information put in now. And now I'll go to the girls' information. So starting off with 160, 159, 165, 150, 152, and 154. Remember that this is just the rough version of my stem and leaf plot because the values in the leaf aren't ordered. So I just need to tidy this up slightly to make the final version of my graph. I'll make sure to enter my headings. My stem will remain the same, and now I'm going to order my data on the boys' side of the table. Now just be aware that as I fill my values in on the left hand side of the table, I should be moving out from the stem. So my smallest values will be closest to the stem, and then as I move away the values will get bigger. So for example, in that first row, 2 is fine where it is, and 5. In the next row, the smaller value should be closer to the stem. So I'll put 5 here and 8 here. And then in my last row, 5 is closest to the stem and 8 is furthest away. I must also complete the right hand side of the graph. There's nothing to put in the row starting 14. So in the next row now, I'm going to start with 0, 2, 4, 9. My final row will be 0 and 5. Remember that this 5, for example, at the end doesn't represent the number 5, it represents the number 165. There's one last thing that I must do to complete this back-to-back stem and leaf. Can you think what it might be? It's that I must include a key. And because I have 2 sides to my stem and leaf, I must include a key for each side. I'm going to start on the girls' side. And I'm going to go with my first value here. So I'm going to say that my key is 15/0 equals 150 centimetres. Remember, with the girls' side on the right, I'm reading out in this direction from the stem. Now I'm going to go and look at the key for the boys' side. Again, I'll go with my first value. Notice the way it's written, the 2, the slash, the 14. But the way that we read that information is from the stem out. So it's 142, not 214. So the key for the boys' side of the table should be 2/14 equals 142 centimetres. Looking back to our question, we were also asked to analyse the data to determine which group is taller. It's not sufficient for me to just glance at the data here and make a decision. I have to do some calculations because this is what the word analyse means. So what might be some sensible calculations to make? Well, when I'm trying to compare two groups, it's important that I talk about averages. I should state which group is taller on average. Remember, there are 3 different types of average that I can choose from: mode, median, and mean. Mean is generally a good choice unless you have got an outlier. Let's have a look at the data on both sides. Okay, so in the boys' data, none of these values is very far away from the rest. And the girls' data is also quite closely grouped. So mean is a sensible choice in this case for my average. Since there are 2 different averages here that I'm calculating, I could call the boys' average x bar with a little b next to it, and I could call the girls' average x bar g, just so that I don't confuse the two. In both the case of the boys and the girls, I'm dealing with a list of information. So the formula that I'm going to use is x bar equals summation x over n. I'm just going to split my page up so it's clear which calculations are for the boys and which calculations are for the girls. And I'm going to start by calculating the mean for the boys' set of data. At this point, it would be a good idea for you to pause the video and see if you can calculate this correctly yourself. Then play and check if you're correct. So first of all, I'll write down summation x. That is all my values for the boys' heights added together. Make sure that if you're taking this data from the stem and leaf graph, that you take note of the fact that these values are 142, 145, 155, and so on. Don't mistake them for 2, 5, 5, 8, 5, and 8. In this case, summation x comes out as 933. N is the number of pieces of data, and I can see that there were 6 boys, because there were 6 values in the leaf part of that stem and leaf for the boys. And then finally, I want to calculate the mean for the boys. And as we discussed earlier, I can call this x bar b just to indicate that it's the mean for the boys specifically. And of course, we know that calculating mean is simply a case of taking summation x and dividing it by n. And in this case, mean height of the boys is 155.5 centimetres. Now we'll move on to the girls. Again, like before, pause the video here and do this calculation yourself, and then play and check if you're correct. So summation x for the girls is 940, and there are 6 in that group also. So again, like we discussed, we can call the mean for the girls x bar with a little g to indicate it's their value, and the mean for the girls is 156.67 centimetres, and I'm choosing to round that to 2 decimal places. So now I've done my calculation, that's my analysis, but now I want to make a statement to conclude about which group is actually taller. It's important how I phrase this. I can't just say girls are taller than boys, because I can clearly see from my data that I have a boy who's 168 centimetres, and he's obviously taller than this girl that's 150 centimetres. So if I say that girls are taller than boys, that statement is incorrect. However, if I preface my statement with the phrase on average, then I'm fine. So I can say, on average, the girls are taller than the boys. And I'll qualify this by saying, since the mean for the girls is greater than the mean for the boys. Let's look back to our stem and leaf one more time with a view to answering 2 more questions. The first question that I want to look at is, what is the modal height of this group? So in this question, I want to find the modal height, but it doesn't specify whether I want to find the modal height of the boys or the girls. And that's because I want to find the modal height of actually the whole group. Don't forget, the mode is what we mean by modal. So what I'm looking for is the value that's occurring the most. So I'll need to go through all of my data here, and I can see that, okay, so there's no repeating value in the 140s. There's no repeating value in the 150s, and there is a repeating value in the 160s, because this 5 occurs on both sides of the stem. So should I say the modal height is 5? No, I should say the modal height is 165 and make sure to include your units. Okay, next I want to find the median height of the girls. And we know from before that median means the middle value. And we know we have a little formula n+1/2 to locate where that median actually is located. So the first thing I must do is make a note of n. We already noticed this when we were calculating the mean a moment ago. There are 6 girls in the group, so n equals 6. And now I'm going to use that to calculate n+1/2. So this is 6 + 1/2, which is 3.5. Again, be really careful with median. 3.5 isn't the answer, it's where I need to look. And so what I really mean is the 3.5th piece of data. But as we know from past experience, there is no 3.5th piece of data. Instead, I must take the 3rd and 4th pieces of data and average them. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the girls' set of data and identify the 3rd and 4th pieces of data. So I start from the top. My first value is 150 and I work out from there. 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. And now I'll want to average these, but be careful. It's not 4 and 9. It's 154 and 159. So to calculate my median, I'll add these two values and I'll divide by 2 and I get an answer of 156.5. Notice that I've put the units at the end. And if you recall previously when we were looking at mean for a particular group, we could use X bar G and X bar B to indicate whether it was boys or girls. You can do the same thing with median actually. We can call this value median G. This question 3 is the same idea as question 2. So again, we're looking at median. I want to find the median height of the boys this time. Pause the video here and give this a shot yourself and then play and see if you're correct. So I'm going to make a note of n. And again, for the boys, n is equal to 6. And we'll calculate n+1/2, which is 6 + 1/2, which is the 3.5th piece of data. So again, like before, this means that I must average the 3rd and 4th pieces of data. So I need to identify the 3rd and 4th pieces of data. And just be careful as you're doing this on the left-hand side of a stem and leaf like this, that you always count out from the stem. So 1, 2, 3, this is my 3rd piece of data. 4. This is my 4th piece of data. Again, don't fall into that mistake of thinking that this is the number 5, this is the number 8. They're not. That guy is 155 and this is 158. And this comes out as 156.5, which is coincidentally the same as it was for the girls. This won't always happen. Don't forget to include my units. And remember, like we said before, since we've got 2 separate groups, we can use a little bit of subscript to identify which one we're talking about if we're doing individual calculations. So here I could call the median B for boys, just to clarify that.